All right, we're rolling. Well, good evening and welcome to the Scuttlebutt podcast. I'm Rich Mellon. With me tonight is a trapper from Kenora, Ontario, Andrew Dean. Andrew, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
We're glad to have you. You have a very unique story.
Yes, I do.
I,
Yes.
and
Um,
it's how you got into trapping and actually how you ended up in Canada as well. Can you give us a telling of how this all happened?
well, I grew up in a little sort of a village in England called Fontwell, and the nearest biggest cities was Portsmouth and Brighton. We were sort of in the middle, and we were surrounded by countryside, the South Downs. There was a lot of big estates where they did a lot of pheasant shooting and grouse and stuff like that. Not grouse, partridge, but mostly pheasant. And I think the earliest recollection of me of doing any type of trapping was actually catching mice and rats around the house. Um, we always had mice in the house, and we would trap them, and we had rats in the garden because my sister kept guinea pigs, and so that would attract them. So it was always my job to set the traps and catch the rats and stuff. But then I think one day we were walking in the woods. We always went for a walk in the park, and I come across a fox snare that the gamekeepers were using to snare foxes, and it kind of fascinated me on how it worked and the setup and everything. And so that was sort of my first bit of a taste of trapping.
Can I just interrupt you there? For us in North America, can you explain what a gamekeeper is?
A gamekeeper is hired by an estate. The queen actually has gamekeepers, and what they do is they rear pheasants um, right from they get the eggs and they raise the chicks all through the summer, right up to hunting season in September, and then once hunting season rolls around, guests are invited, and it's a driven shoot. So they would hire beaters to beat through the bush, and the guns would be pegged out in the fields, and the idea was to try and drive the birds over the guns so that they could to shoot them. And that was the gamekeeper's job, to raise the birds, and also um, they would do a lot of vermin control, trapping different animals. Anything that would interfere with pheasants was generally caught. Now,
Okay.
it's not so much because a lot of the wildlife is protected over there. But back in the old days, they pretty much trapped anything that interfered with pheasants.
I never realized that pheasants were quite that important. I mean, I'd heard the term gamekeeper, but I kind of always took it to be something like when a municipality or a county or whatever hires a trapper to take care of beavers or whatever. I didn't realize that it was focused around the pheasant.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, some of the old states years ago, they would have several gamekeepers, maybe half a dozen of them, and they look after the huge estates. And of course, their job is to try and try and stop the poachers, because there was always poachers back in those days.
Ah, so they also had that responsibility.
Right. And that included myself because being private land in England, it was very difficult to get permission to do any hunting of any kind. And even though I did have permission from some farmers to hunt rabbits and pigeons and stuff like that, the idea of being able to hunt deer and pheasants and stuff like that, it was just, I was in the wrong class of people.
Oh, really? My, how the world has moved
So,
on from that, huh?
right. So we sort of helped ourselves whenever the opportunity arose.
Well, that's fascinating. So they had that responsibility, and you ran into a gamekeeper's snare, and he was snaring fox.
You're snaring a fox. It was back in those days. It was just a basic snare, and they had brass eyelets in them. There was no locking device or nothing like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
A very basic snare.
Very basic snare. Yeah.
And this fascinated you then?
Yeah. Well, it got me definitely interested in it. Um, my dad had a book in his library, and I still have the original book here. And this is it right here. If you can see that.
The Poacher's Handbook.
Right. And it was written by a guy, the author was Ian Nail. And I actually wrote to him after I moved to Canada, and I got a letter back from him. But it talked all about the different ways of catching rabbits and pheasants and stuff. Not exactly legally back in those days. But it had a picture of a trap in there called a gin trap. I'm sure you've heard the term before.
Yeah. In Africa, so go ahead.
Sorry. Gin traps were generally used for catching rabbits and foxes, and they had like little round ones as well that they were used for birds. They put them on top of a pole, and the hawks and that would sit on top of the pole and get caught in the trap and just hang there. So they were called pole traps. I actually have a gin trap here. This is the old style gin trap from England.
Wow.
And it was used for rabbits, and they were outlawed in the early 50s, I think.
That is cool. Yeah, I was looking at the tooth jaw and all that stuff, and the spring. It's a two-piece spring, isn't it? Isn't it? Yeah.
It has a base on it, and then it just have one spring comes around. Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay, that's an extended part of the base. Oh, that's different.
And it works basically the same as a like a 1.5 trap.
Yep. Yeah.
Now they actually made bigger ones for these. They made really big ones that were sent to Africa and used for lions and stuff like that. And they also made really big ones back in the 15th century, which they used against poachers.
Yeah.
And they were actually set, and poachers would get caught in them. It was like a huge bear trap.
Right, right. So the gamekeeper, was this a guild? Was this a guild or an apprenticeship, or how did you become a gamekeeper?
I believe these days they actually have a university course that you go through, like an apprenticeship.
Right.
But I think back in the earlier days, you would apply to work on an estate, and you work as I think they call it an underkeeper. And
oh, cool.
Under the keeper, and he would teach you all the tricks of the trade.
Oh, that's fascinating. It's the colonial days and that. I mean, it harkens back to, we have friends in South Africa. We spent quite a bit of time there, and they're professional hunter. When that's your PH is the guy who's here in Canada, we call him a guide, right? They're a guide or an outfitter, but they're a PH, and they go through an incredible school. And I mean, even their final test is a week long. There's 7 days of practical and written, and they even hunt and process animals and everything, all to become a professional hunter. It is quite an honorable tradition and profession. You know, I find that very cool about the colonialism. That's why I asked whether or not it was a guild. But yeah, so you started as an underkeeper, huh?
Started as an underkeeper, and you work your way up. Yes.
Oh, cool.
Actually, when I left school, we could leave at school at 15 years old back then, and I wanted to become a gamekeeper. That was what I wanted. And my dad, in all his wisdom, said, "Well, you could be a gamekeeper, but you really need to get some kind of apprenticeship first, and then you can do whatever you want." And so I actually took a machinist apprenticeship.
Dads are so wise, aren't they?
Yeah. So I did that for 4 years. And then the opportunity arose to come to Canada.
So what dates are we talking here when you came to Canada?
I believe it was 1972.
1972. So
Right.
what was the motivation to come to Canada? Was it following the trapping or following being a machinist, or did you find a lady?
No. It was mostly the trapping interest. Of course, we didn't have computers or cell phones or anything back in those days.
No.
And I think I subscribed to the Fur Fishing Game magazine, and I would write to all the different companies to try and get their trapping supply catalogs.
Oh, cool.
And I ended up being a pen friend with a guy named Reg Baird. And at the time, he had Snow Country trap lines. And he would send me some traps and different information. And this really got my interest in going, that this is the place where I wanted to go. Because I'm an outdoor person. I like hunting, fishing, and especially trapping. So I figured Canada was the place to go. I just got to find a way to get there.
So what was the attitude towards trapping in 1972 in England?
Trapping was the gamekeepers would trap just mostly vermin, anything that interfered with pheasants or the other game. There was no real fur market. People used to trap squirrels and send the tails off. I think they were made for fishing flies and stuff like that.
Right.
There was a limited fur market, but nothing like North America.
No. Okay.
The
But
gamekeepers were,
I was wondering what was the public perception like. Now the UK is the hotbed of flat out crazy when it comes to the antis of or anti-fur, right?
yeah, it's like I say, they banned the gin trap back in the 50s, and they come up with all different types of replacements. Some are just bulky and big and didn't work, but the attitude was people really didn't like um, the trapping aspect. Um, we used to do a lot of ferreting. We used to use ferrets to catch rabbits.
Oh, that is extra cool.
Over here, ferrets are kept as pets. We used to, I used to have two ferrets, and their names was Bonnie and Clyde. And I kept them in a hut in the garden. And we did have permission in certain places to hunt rabbits. And we put the ferrets down the holes and put nets over the holes, special nets, and the ferrets would drive the rabbits out.
No kidding. How
Yeah,
how
that,
how domesticated were
that
the
is-
ferrets?
right.
Like I mean, how
We
domesticated
used
were
to do
they?
a lot-
What's that?
Oh, they were. They're not. They're not like. They're not. They're not pets like they are over here.
Okay.
My kid had a couple of ferrets, and they were just pets.
Okay.
Over there, you had to be wary of them. They give you a good bite. I had one hang on my finger one day, and I couldn't get it off. I actually put him on a fence post and tap his head to get him off, and I had to go get shots for it. But yeah,
So-
they were pretty. It could be pretty vicious.
So you take Bonnie and Clyde then out in a cage. You take them to where you were going to hunt rabbits, and you'd send them down a hole. How do you get them back?
Oh, they come back out. Sometimes they would kill a rabbit down the hole, and then we always had two ferrets. So the second ferret, we had a little collar, and we'd run a line on the collar, and we tie a knot every 12 inches or 2 feet, and then we estimate how far down the hole he is, and then we always had a shovel. You dig them out.
Oh, that's
Sometimes we had
fascinating.
Yeah. Sometimes you would have 2 or 3 rabbits stuck at the end of the hole.
No kidding. Oh man, that is fascinating. I love those tie a knot every 12 inches on the string solutions. I mean that was pretty cool. It's pretty inventive, and you knew kind of what your day was going to be like because if he's 20 knots down, it's like, oh dear.
You could put your ear to the ground too and hear them thumping around. But
Yeah.
these days they have some kind of transmitters on the ferrets that you can pick up where they are.
Okay.
Like ferreting is still a big thing over there, and snaring and trapping to a certain extent. But the types of traps, I think they actually use coney bears over there now.
Okay. Um, you talk about you can hear them. I mean, we have weasels kill squirrels underneath the cabin, and there's sometimes in the middle of the night there's a god awful thumping and a blood curdling scream goes off, and you know what's happening. And once you wake up and your heart rate slows, you understand that another squirrel met his demise to a weasel underneath the cabin. But you say that snaring and ferreting are still popular in the UK?
Yep.
Really?
And also pheasant shooting, deer stalking. But it's only certain people. It's very difficult to get a rifle in England.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I could not get a rifle. I had shotguns long before I was supposed to have them.
I have a great. I have a great story about a gun in England. This guy was a pilot for UPS, and we were down in Wyoming, and he was telling us this story. But he flew into Glasgow, I think it was, and he had his shotgun with him to do some hunting, and then they ended up driving from Glasgow down into England, and because that gun didn't get into England the proper way, and that it was like an international incident, and he says, I actually spent time in jail. Well, they were figuring it out, but he was I think it was FedEx pilot is what he was. It was just crazy things you just don't think about, right?
Right. Yes. I bought my first shotgun. It was a bolt action 410. I think I was about 16. I don't think we were allowed to have one till we were 18. And then my dad found out about it, and then he took it away. And so right away, I found another one. I bought another one. I actually have. This is the type of shotgun I had back then. So this is actually a Poaching 410.
A what?
It was a Poacher's 410.
A Poacher's 410.
Right, had a skeleton stock, and the gun would actually fold in half, like so.
Oh, cool.
I would put that in my pocket, and I wear a jacket over top. Nobody ever know it was there.
Oh, the things we used to do when we were kids.
For a rifle, we could only have air rifles, but we had, this is a BSA, pre-war 22 pellet gun.
Okay, and
I can underleave it.
yes,
Like so, and you put your pellet in there.
okay.
These are highly collectible.
I've never seen one like that.
Pardon?
I've never seen one like that, and especially not with where you load the pellet being so far up the, because that's all a huge spring then behind it, right? Okay.
Inside, yeah.
Yeah, it's spring and piston.
This is
Yeah.
the actual gun that I had. This is the actual gun that I had when I was a kid.
So what would that kill?
I bought it over. You could kill rabbits at 50 yards with it.
At 50 yards.
Or pheasants.
Or pheasants. Yeah, you weren't supposed to be shooting those.
Right.
So in 1972, you were how old when you came to Canada? 18?
19.
19.
19.
Wow.
A friend of mine happened to be in a pub one night, and somehow he found out the Hudson Bay Company were hiring people to come to Canada to work in their northern stores. And he told me about it, so I looked into it a little bit, And then I found out that I could go for an interview in Canada House in London and apply for the job. So that's what I did.
No
And,
kidding.
went up there and applied, and then they told me they'd let me know in a couple of weeks. Then I got a letter from them. They wanted me to go for a medical, and then next thing I was hired,
No kidding. So,
and on a plane to come to Canada. And there was about, I can't remember how many people I come with, maybe 30 or 40 other people. It was part of the Hudson Bay tradition back then to hire people from England and Scotland.
okay,
And
yeah,
that
yeah.
was I think 72 was the last year that allowed people to come in like that.
What was your job?
So I sort of just slipped under the wire.
Yeah. What was your job? What did you do for the Hudson Bay?
Hey, Rich here. Sandy and I are pleased at the rapid growth of our exclusive community, Trapping Inc. at locals.com. We created the community to connect more closely with our fans, friends, and supporters without the interference and censorship of social media companies. Because this community is subscriber exclusive, there is no censored photos, shadow banning, and deplatforming as happens on Twitter and Facebook. Trolls are non-existent, as not a one will spend a nickel and put their money where their mouth is to protest on a paid site. You know it. We are steadily moving all Trapping Inc. YouTube videos and podcasts as quickly as time and bandwidth allow. We're tickled and surprised to see how large of library we must move. As well, we are sharing articles on trapping and guns and shooting. Our new TV series, Married to the Hunt, videos are here too. Hours and hours of never before released to the internet hunting and fishing from around the world. TrappingInc.locals.com will be the exclusive home of all Trapping Inc. content from the past and into the future. What else is there to do? Well, there's a forum for everyone to post pictures on and interact. You can message us directly on TrappingInc.locals.com, as well as interact with all the other subscribers. These are all people with common interests. Get in here. This whole venture is about taking the Trapping Inc. TV community to the next level, building a community of shared interest and interacting with all of our friends. Who knows where we can go from here? Just go to locals.com and sign up for a free account. Then search for Trapping Inc. and subscribe for $5 a month. That's it. Go to locals.com to open a free account and then subscribe for $5 a month to Trapping Inc. Help us spread the truth about a way of life and the responsible, ethical management of the wild resources. TrappingInc.locals.com. Now back to the show.
Well, what happened first was that we flew to Toronto, and then we had to fly to Winnipeg. And I remember going down the runway in Toronto, and all of a sudden, the plane put the brakes on. Everything went flying in the plane. Apparently, we ran into a flock of birds, and they managed to stop it before takeoff.
Oh my.
So it took a couple hours on the runway to clean it out, and the second time around, I think you could probably hear a pin drop on that plane.
Yep.
So we finally made it to Winnipeg. We stayed in Winnipeg about, I think it was 3 days to get orientated. We stayed in the Marble Hotel. We went to the Fur Depot. We got shown around a little bit. We went to the head office. And then we had a choice of where we wanted to go. We could go to the Arctic, or the city, or the bush. And so I decided I wanted to go to the bush. So I was told to get a taxi and go to Kenora. Get on the Greyhound bus and go to Kenora. And then you get a taxi, and then you go to Grassy Narrows, which is about 40, 50 kilometers north of Kenora.
Yes. Yeah.
So I remember getting in the taxi, and the taxi driver was asking some questions, and he says, "Why are you going to Grassy Narrows?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to work for the Hudson Bay Company." And he said, "Well, good luck." So when I got to Grass, I was met by Doug and Joan Ross. They were the store manager, and the store was actually off the reserve. And my job was basically to it was a store trainee store manager. But I started off like sweeping the floor, stocking the shelves, and stuff like that.
God,
And
what?
I was there for about 2 months, and then I got transferred. I went to Cat Lake, which is about 45-minute flight north of Red Lake. And so I flew up there, and that was there was no roads out there. It was just a fly-in reserve. And that particular store, it was the last log store in the district. The whole store was made of logs,
Oh, neat.
and the warehouse was made of logs. Yeah, it was really neat. So I
Yeah.
actually spent about 9 months at Cat Lake, and I pretty much did the same things: stocking the shelves, sweeping the floor, helping out with the book work, and of course helping out packing up the furs when they came in the fall.
Oh, so you did get to handle furs a little bit, and you got to see the traps and lures and all that kind of stuff. And
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I was at Cat Lake for about 9 months, and then I got shipped back to Grassy. And then I heard that the paper mill in Kenora at the time was looking for a machinist because one of them was going to retire. So I went there and applied for the job, and I stayed there for 30 years until it shut down.
oh wow, what a big adventure for a 19-year-old kid in 1972. I mean, even flight wasn't that, it wasn't very old at that time, even, and you jumped on a plane and away you come.
Yeah, yeah, it was definitely a big adventure. Lots of fun.
So some point along the way, then, while you were working as a machinist, you got into trapping.
I did. I went to the mill for a while, and then I met my wife, Donna, and it wasn't very long before we got married, and kids were starting to come along, and I was starting to look for a trap line of my own, which was pretty hard to find. Pretty hard to find at the time. But I did get some private land trapping to work on. So that's how I started out, a little bit of private land trapping. And then I was looking for a registered line, and I went into the Ministry of Natural Resources office, I think probably every second week, and bugged them.
You wore them down. You wore them down.
Yeah. That was back in those days. You could. It was very different than what it is now. You could walk into the office and go sit down with the COs, have a cup of coffee, and chit chat. But now everything's just over the counter.
Yeah.
And it was actually a CO named Wayne Stack that gave me the trap line. And he said, "Well, there's a line come available on Dryberry Lake." And he gave me a map, and he said, "Go see what you can do."
Oh, cool.
That's how I started out.
So, registered trap lines in Ontario, they're all on Crown land, right? Public land?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And you guys have a quota system on beaver, right? Where you have
Yes,
to catch a minimum amount of like, say they say your quota for your particular trap line is 100 beaver. You have to catch like 75% of that to hold that trap line
Right.
every. Pardon me?
Right. 75%. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we have quotas on animals here in Alberta, but it's the opposite. That's our maximum we can catch.
Okay.
Like I'm allowed 18 fisher. That's a maximum number of fisher I can catch. But your quota is quite different. So that must have been, I don't know. What was the idea behind that? To keep the beaver under control, or I never heard of.
I think the idea was that they wanted people to actually get out there and trap, whether fur prices were high or low. So, because some people would only trap when fur prices were high, and then they wouldn't bother when they were low, sort of like they are right now. So the idea was to force you to go out there and trap those beaver. And on the other end of the scale, we had a quota. I have a quota on lynx and fisher. We're not allowed very many. I think I'm allowed 2 lynx and 3 fisher, and that is so we don't overtrap.
Okay. Okay, so you how big is your trap line?
Hard to say. It's a kind of an odd shape, but it's probably 60, 70 square miles.
Oh, it's a nice size then.
Yeah.
And how would you describe the terrain?
About half lake and half bush. Driver is a very big lake. It's a trout lake. And in the fall, we do all our trapping from the water. So all my martin boxes are all set around the shoreline. So we just drive around the boat and check them.
So when does your martin season open?
October the 25th.
And you still have open water then?
Yeah, there's a big trout lake, and it stays open till mid-December, late December.
Really? Cool. Do you have a lot of martin on your line?
Yeah, we generally take around 80, something like that.
That's awesome. You guys have those nice dark brown martin too. I'm jealous.
Yeah, we put all the boxes around the shoreline so we can, just drive around the boat and check them from the boat. There are other places. We have quite a few trails as well, which we walk. It's nice to get out of the boat once in a while, and especially if it's a cold, miserable day, and walking and check other traps as well.
What's your
We trap otter and mink.
what's your favorite set for martin? Maybe and be the same thing for fisher too, I imagine.
Yeah, we just use the box. It's exactly the same as you, except mine are upright, not upside down.
Okay. Couple reasons we
And
can't.
I just for beaver meat. Sorry.
Right. I would just say we get too much snow to have them the way to set a box the way you do. You feel full of snow all the time. You have
We make ours so we can just flip them over and knock out any snow and stuff.
you have beaver, muskrat, mink, otter,
Yeah,
fisher.
We don't have a lot of muskrats here.
No.
Not on my line.
Okay. Lots of otter and mink.
We get some mink, not a lot. Most of them get caught in the martin boxes. We don't actually set for fisher either because they go into the martin boxes. We get about, my beaver quota is 60, but it varies. Because one year we had a big fire go through, and of course there was lots of food for the beavers, and the population went way up. And so we put the quota up to 60, but now it's down to around, we only take about 30 right now.
Okay.
And the ministry's okay with that. They're not, as long as you get out there and do something, they're not super stringent on the getting the 75%, especially
Okay.
on a year like this when prices are so low as well.
And you have a lot of wolf and coyote as well?
Not a lot. There used to be a lot of wolves when there was a lot of moose there. We used to hunt moose there every year. It was nothing to see 10 moose in a couple of weeks. But the moose got this brain worm,
Oh.
and it killed a lot of them off. So it's a rare sight to see a moose out there right now.
Wow. But you're not in part of that Algonquin wolf thing. You're too far west for that, aren't you? Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, we have we can trap as many wolves as we want. We don't have a quota on wolves or marten or otters, stuff like that.
What's your favorite animal to trap?
I enjoy catching wolves because they're a challenge. I like to try and outsmart them. This year I picked up 3. But marten are pretty easy to catch, pretty easy to skin.
I I'm with you on that. Martin are easy to catch. They're easy to skin, and they're good money for basically they're less work than a squirrel. You know.
Yeah.
and they're better for my big fat hands to fit in than a squirrel does. So I really like Martin. What is your most successful or favorite set for wolves?
Actually been using the Burt round snares, and I find they work really well.
Oh, really?
The big, yeah,
The big Wolfmaster.
Master, yeah.
Yeah. And so, are you
We
blind?
also- no, I set up bait and I leave it for a few weeks until they start coming in, and then I set it back in the trails where they're coming in.
Yeah, yeah. Same as what we do. I don't use I used a lot of the power rams for coyotes, but when it comes to wolves, I use free hangers, free hanging snares, and that just because
Also, I use the MB 750s as well for wolves.
okay.
The only problem with that is that in Ontario you have to check them every 24 hours. So you can't really set them and then leave them for a couple of days.
We have a 24-hour check in the residential in private land, but out on our registered lands we have a 48-hour check. But still, I can't get around all of my trails in 48 hours. You just can't, and you keep going in circles like that. Wolves are never gonna come in anyway, right?
It might take
Pardon me?
maybe a week or two before they come back.
Oh yeah, it's a difficult thing. Like there's lots of times you set up a wolf bait, and I set it up in November, and the first time the wolves come through is January.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah.
you just can't beat the
You never know
snares.
when they're coming.
Yeah, you do. You don't know what
No.
you don't know. You don't know. So
Yeah, that's right.
tell me about your favorite catch. What was the most unique or special catch that you've made? Or
Most unique catch. I caught a trout in a beaver house once in a county bear.
yeah.
Yeah, that was a bit of a surprise. I've had two mergansers together in a coney bear
Oh yeah.
while they were fishing, because they come around the beaver houses looking for minnows. And
Yep.
I've had a squirrel and a weasel together in the same trap
Yeah.
in a martin.
I caught
Um,
I caught two flying squirrels and a weasel in the same trap.
oh wow!
Yeah.
And a weasel.
Yeah, and a weasel.
You have
Yeah.
a lot of flies.
We have a
You
lot
have a
of
lot of flies.
yeah. We have lots.
They're a
Yeah.
nuisance.
They are the bane of my existence. Them and the pygmy shrew. Do you have pygmy shrews?
No, nothing. I don't think so.
They're just
Well, they chew the fur.
they're about this big, like big as my thumb. They can go through half-inch square mesh like nothing. They just shoot through it. But they as your meat freeze dries in the wintertime, like along about Christmas, all my bait, I'll have a fist-sized chunk of beaver meat in there, but or half a muskrat, and all that bait freeze dries, and so it gets kind of like wood or whatever. But they go and they eat all the meat off the bones, and
Oh, wow.
you pull out this half a muskrat, and you have this perfect skeleton, and it's perfectly naked, right? Because they've ate all the meat off, and it's a pygmy shrew. If any of my fur happens to lean against a tree or on the ground or whatever, they do terrible damage. They're just an awful thing. So all of my traps hang upside down, are all face down, and then I have a pole at the top, so when they hit it and they swing out, that's just to protect my fur. Like
Right.
if I didn't have to do it to protect my fur, well, it's that much less work to do, right? But there's no sense killing something if you're not going to be able to utilize it, right? And I hate them. If you have, it's happened to me, I don't know, It didn't happen last winter, but the winter before, I had one martin hang up, falling out of the box, and because it hung up on the cable, it laid up against the tree, and the side that was laid against the tree, everything that was in contact with the tree, well, they went up through there, and they just mowed it. It looked like you'd taken a electric razor and buzzed up, but they just pulled all that fur off. Yeah, it was like it just the whole side and half the back of a martin. It was just a shame, but yeah, everybody's got to eat, I guess.
Hey folks, Rich from Trapping Inc. TV here. And we all have our idea of the perfect morning. You know what I'm talking about. For me, the perfect morning starts with the aroma and flavor of freshly brewed Old Smokes coffee. Studies have shown that just the smell of fresh coffee can boost brain activity. No kidding. Well, that's certainly no secret to me. I can barely talk before that first cup. Just ask Sandy. I'm a dark roast man, and Old Smokes Coffee's darkest roast, Stout Maple, is what gets my day in gear. Extra dark, it's strong, aromatic, and smooth. Gets me revved up for whatever the day throws at me. Old Smokes roast their coffee over wood fires, the old-fashioned way. Wood roasting takes more time, much longer than modern hot air roasting. Slow roasting over wood takes the bitter out of the bean and imparts a heavenly taste and aroma from the wood smoke. Old Smokes makes a roast perfect for each person. There are 5 roasts, from light to extra dark, each roasted over a different wood for a unique flavor. Did you know the darker the roast, the lower the caffeine content? It's true. Caffeine is a volatile oil that evaporates with roasting. The lightest roast has the most caffeine, and the darkest roast have the most flavor. Right now, you can order from their online store and use our promo code RICH. That's RICH. And get 10% off your entire order. Pretty simple. Just go to www.oldsmokescoffee.com. That's OLE smokescoffee.com and use the promo code RICH. That is promo code RICH for 10% off your entire order. And now let's get to today's show.
Yeah.
Whoever thought an eagle would stick his head in there.
You never know what's going on.
I had a lynx, this particular lynx here. This guy here, he got caught by putting his paw in the martin box.
Yeah.
Yeah. That happens once in a while, but not very often.
I don't have it happen with lynx. Like lynx will check out my martin boxes often, and I have a habit of setting a lynx pen right next to a martin box. But they'll walk up and they'll go look at it, and I've always wanted to do a step up set. You know, where you take and put a short little stump on the tree. You know, my martin box would be up here, and you know, I want to have a step up there, and you know, like a little stump that they would step up on, and because they'll take and put their feet up on it, you know, to sniff what's going on. If I have that step up there, then with a foothold on, it'd be an easy way to catch a martin or catch a lynx. And I mean, that was very common in this country back in the old days of trapping. The only problem is I got to check that every 48 hours, and that's just not possible to do. So, you know, I do set them up when I go out at Christmas time, and I'm out there for a couple of weeks. Well, I'll set them up then, and it's a lot of fun. I haven't caught enough of them yet to make a whole show on it, but I should show a couple of them because it is cool. It is cool. Just they're curious, but I've never yet had one climb the tree or go into a box or get caught by foot. Never had that. I had. I guess the worst I've had is a Wolverine, and he went.
Oh wow!
Yeah, well, he went and he smashed a bunch of boxes, just tore them apart, and I don't know how they do it, but he tore the martin boxes apart without springing the trap. So I don't know whether he managed to hook that trap out first, or it fell out, or whatever. Grizzly bears do the same thing. They get the trap out of the on the show this year. You'll see where we had a grizzly bear that robbed a fisher trap. Anyway, he did it on like 3 of them and crushed them in that. And then on the 4th one, he got caught. He got caught. He had the 120 on his foot. Well, then you know he fought and struggled and all that, and he got loose. He pulled the nail out of the tree. And he's gone with my trap, and of course destroyed the box. He goes in the next 2 boxes in a row. He absolutely destroys, take the meat and everything else. And on the last one, he left a trap that he'd had on his foot. I don't know how he did it, but I'm so glad he did. You know. But meanwhile, before he had that trap on, he had walked right by a Wolverine set, you know, which had a big chunk of bait there, and you know, like half a beaver hanging in there, and a 330 and everything else, you know, was designed for him. But he wasn't interested in that. He was interested in those martin boxes. And I often wonder. I've thought about that, and I was wondering if it had anything to do with my lure, because you know, when you do a big bait site for lynx and wolverine, you never put a lure on it, right? And I wonder if it was because of that skunky, I use a skunky lure for martin. I was wondering if that's what was attracting it so much. I don't think it was a big wolverine by any means. Like, didn't seem to be. The tracks weren't that very big. And if I was to bet on it, I would bet it was a female. But it kind of knew how the game was played. It followed my tracks, and it just went shopping on my line.
We're not allowed to trap wolverines here. There's been a few accidental catches,
Right.
and if it's an accidental catch, you can keep the first one, but if you catch another one, you're not supposed to keep it. You're supposed to turn it in.
Well, you know, and one of the problems.
Wolverine is something.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I've always wanted a wolverine, and a friend of mine had one for sale, like ready mounted. So he wanted quite a bit of money for it, but I ended up buying it because I had to have it.
Yeah, they're a cool animal, and you know where there's lots of wolverine, they are as dumb as Fisher. You know, they are just as brazen as Fisher are. You know, like a Fisher's probably the easiest to catch. Martin isn't that hard either, but Fisher are, you know, where a Martin might stop and look at something, and Fisher just charges right in. Well, that's a wolverine, but the problem is that you don't have a lot of wolverine. Except, you know, you get northern Alberta and into the territories, they have lots and lots of wolverine. Well, you talk with Devin, I think he got 21 wolverine this winter. You know, there's nothing hard about catching wolverine. He sets all his our 330s set in a milk crate. You know, you know, there are people that go about and saw a hole in a giant log to put the trap in and all that. They're just making themselves a bunch of work. Another some guys that we've had on the show. The Schaubs, they use you know, 4-foot stucco wire. Make a cage this big, put a 330 in the front, and usually hang like a big chunk of lynx in there. And the wolverine really like to eat lynx, and you know, their whole idea is that sometimes the wolverine will climb the tree and jump in, and they get it on the way out, or the wolverine thinks that the cage itself, that metal is what should be avoided, and so then it just goes to jump through the 330, right? But they're not, where there's lots of them, they're not that bright. So I don't know whether where there's not lots of them, why they seem to be smarter, or it's just because we want to catch one so bad. I don't know.
I know they have them north of here, north of Red Lake. And they actually do, I think they follow them and study them up there. But yeah, very rare to see one around here.
Yeah. It's rare on my trap line, and mostly because I don't have a lot of elevation on my trap line, which is unusual. You get any places where you get the boreal forest plateaus and that kind of stuff, that's where they like to exist. My trap line's pretty flat and low. Probably the center quarter of it is too wet for really anything. It's tamarack and black spruce, and you get lynx travel through there in the wintertime. You know, that's about it. You know, there's not even, no, the wolves don't even go through there or anything else. So that's the biggest problem I got. I mean, the guys on each side of me and the guys, of course, to the north and all that, all have wolverine. I just very seldom have them come through. I've had this trap line now, 6 or 7 years, and I think I've had 4 wolverine go through in that time. But and they're just going through. They don't live there or anything else. They're just traveling, right?
Traveling through, yeah.
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah. It's cool, and it, go ahead.
cool. I actually I actually obtained a second trap line this year as a helper, and I actually live on it. My house is on the trap, which is kind of cool.
That
But
is,
when things are a little slow, it's it's nice to just be able to go 10 minutes across the lake and catch a few beaver and whatever.
that is so cool. And I'm jealous of you guys' beaver too, the black beaver. Man, those are pretty.
Yeah, I sent 4 of them in to be tan this year.
Yeah, yeah. I just finished up the last of my beaver. I can't keep up to them in the wintertime, and then in the spring we do a lot of shooting because the oil companies on the trap line they always want the beaver taken care of by the roads, but I can't put traps out. The traps will get stolen, so we do a bunch of shooting. Well, you can build up a lot of beaver to work on in no time flat.
Yeah.
So, what's your favorite animal? What? I mean, you said you really enjoy wolves. Is it just because they're the most difficult?
Yeah, they're a challenge to catch. Yeah, I enjoy trying to outsmart them. But they can be pretty smart.
They can. I found them to be the king of. I always call it Where's Waldo? Like when something changes, you have those cartoons where you have 2 pictures side by side, and spot the 6 differences in that. The wolf would win that every time. Like they can see when something's out of place. It's like they carry this photographic memory or whatever, and they come up to the first time they go through your bait site and that you change anything, they will shy away from it the next time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I dealt with this one guy. He's in the Yukon, and he was trapping wolves. But it was impossible to try and get them to come to bait or anything. But they would travel his snowmobile tracks all the time, and he's on the rivers, and so he tried to take and put traps in his snowmobile track and that kind of stuff, but it just didn't work, right? And too much snow and all that. And when he'd be going down, how a river makes those great big loops and that, and you have the big floodplain on the inside of that loop. Well, he one time decided that he would just try and drive through there. So he drove through where there was a bunch of willows in that, right? Well, and it was perfect then. As he drove through, he could set snares off of these willows because if they're going to follow his snowmobile track, they were going to be within reach of his snares, right? And he says it was great, and they would take and start that way, and then they come back to his trail and head down the river and that. So he took it. He would take a skinned marten carcass. I love it when people think this stuff through, and when it works like this. He would take a skinned marten carcass and he would drop it on his snowmobile trail, right where the other trail took off and went through the willows, and they would not go anywhere near that skinned carcass, and they would take his trail through the willows, and then he'd catch them on that flat in those snares. But it took that skinned marten carcass to be there to make them go on a different trail, And another guy.
Interesting.
Oh, I found it fascinating. I just found it fascinating. I thought, how did he come up with that idea? I like that somebody who has that ability to understand the animal. Another person, and do you blind snare for your lynx much, or?
No, I actually tried those wire cages that I saw on your show.
Yeah.
So I tried those, but we don't catch a lot of lynx.
No.
But they do work.
Okay. What?
Yeah. And then I've actually tried the milk cartons, but I haven't had any luck with the milk cartons.
I don't get many lynx shoving their head in a 330. Not many at all. I think last year I had 2, and I think I had my quota of 22 lynx.
Hey, Rich here. Sandy and I are pleased at the rapid growth of our exclusive community, Trapping Inc. at locals.com. We created the community to connect more closely with our fans, friends, and supporters without the interference and censorship of social media companies. Because this community is subscriber exclusive, there is no censored photos, shadow banning, and deplatforming as happens on Twitter and Facebook. Trolls are non-existent, as not a one will spend a nickel and put their money where their mouth is to protest on a paid site. You know it. We are steadily moving all Trapping Inc. YouTube videos and podcasts as quickly as time and bandwidth allow. We're tickled and surprised to see how large of library we must move. As well, we are sharing articles on trapping and guns and shooting. Our new TV series, Married to the Hunt, videos are here too. Hours and hours of never before released to the internet hunting and fishing from around the world. TrappingInc.locals.com will be the exclusive home of all Trapping Inc. content from the past and into the future. What else is there to do? Well, there's a forum for everyone to post pictures on and interact. You can message us directly on TrappingInc.locals.com, as well as interact with all the other subscribers. These are all people with common interests. Get in here. This whole venture is about taking the Trapping Inc. TV community to the next level, building a community of shared interest and interacting with all of our friends. Who knows where we can go from here? Just go to locals.com and sign up for a free account. Then search for Trapping Inc. and subscribe for $5 a month. That's it. Go to locals.com to open a free account and then subscribe for $5 a month to Trapping Inc. Help us spread the truth about a way of life and the responsible, ethical management of the wild resources. TrappingInc.locals.com. Now back to the show.
I don't know. I shut down about 3 weeks early. Like I had about 3 weeks of seasons left when I ran out of quota, and only 2 of them stuck their head in a 330. But one of the things I like to do is I set a blind snare on my trail, right? Because lynx follow your snowmobile track. You know, they like to wander along. They're lazy animals, and they like to wander along. So, you know, when you go through something thick or whatever, it's always nice to, you know, throw a little bit of blocking in and throw a snare there, a blind snare, right? Well, the wolves will follow my trails too, and they come trotting along, and you can see them hit the brakes. You know, it's like a full skid and everything, and then they go out through the woods and around. And it is just amazing that, you know, that they can smell that snare and everything, and they go around it. And I was telling my buddy about this, and he says, "Did you set a snare for them?" I said, "Well, they just went around that." He says, "No." He says, "You go back around where they went through the bush and come in at it from a 90-degree angle and just take and hang a snare over their trail." He says, "When they come back through, they'll follow their own trail again because it's safe, and they won't even think about it." And it works.
About using the radar.
Yeah.
You come around, wherever you don't walk up to the bait. You walk, make a big circle around it. And you put the snares in where they're coming in. And that's where you get them.
Yeah. Well, this is no bait or anything. This is just the fact that they were leaving my snowmobile track because of my lynx snare, and they go and circle around through the bush, and they always circle downwind so that they know where the danger is and everything. They take and circle around, and then that's what he goes and snares is this you know, where they walked. And he says, "Just leave it there all winter." He says, "They may not come back, but if they come back, they're going to follow their own trail again." And he's right. It works.
I like trapping otters too. We have a lot of otters here.
Okay. Do you bait and lure them, or do you blind set?
No, we just put the sets are all in little creeks, and wherever they're sliding out of the bush, they're going from one lake to another.
Yep.
We always seem to follow the same trail.
Yeah.
And I use the 280 Connie Bears for those.
Yeah. Yeah.
They work real good.
How many otter would you get a winter?
An average of anywhere between 10 and 16.
That's nice.
Don't take a whole lot.
I'm allowed 12, and I could have my 12 in a week. Like, I mean, I have so many otter on my line. All my lakes are full of little fish, like stickleback minnows. And you must have seen where they get it, where you get a little open patch of water. Sometimes, you know, 3-4 feet around is all it is, but it'll be in January, February, and the oxygen content is getting so low in the water. All the minnows are up there guppying, getting air, and the otters are in it, and they're just laying on their backs, and they're just mowing down on these. They're just chewing on them. I actually took otters to a biologist from the U of A. He's doing a study. I got to get a hold of him, too. This reminds me. He's doing a study on parasites that affect mink and otter. And so I took him some of my otters from this year. I think I took him seven carcasses, yeah. And his comment was is that I don't know that they have parasites or that the parasites hurt them at all because they'd never seen animals so fat, you know. And most of the fat on an otter comes off when you skin them, right? When you pull them, you know, the fat is on the skin, right? I weighed them, and like, you know, I'd have the otter skin after I pulled it off, and before I flesh it, it would weigh 6.4 pounds, and after I was done fleshing it, it would weigh 2.8 pounds. So it tells you how many pounds of fat were on that. Like there is. I mean, otters are a very successful predator because when you have a predator that's fat like that, they're doing the job well, you know.
I actually built a skinning machine for skinning otters. Save me tugging on them all the time.
Yeah.
So, it's just I actually built a different one. I put a winch up in the. We do all our skinning in the basement. There's nothing in the basement. It's just my workshop, and I'm allowed to do it down there. So I have this winch up in the rafters of the basement, and then in the cement floor, I have the bar with the vice grips on them.
Yep.
So you skin out the back legs, and you grab the fur in the vice grips, and then you have a hook hooked up to the winch. You just press a button that pulls the skin right off the hide.
Yeah, I do a similar thing, and like otter are one of those animals that you have to pull. Like, I mean, I can do lynx and coyote and all that by hand, but otter, the arthritis in my hands flares up in a big hurry. They're a lot of work.
Yeah. And my beavers, I flesh all my beavers on my knee.
You do.
With a knife, that Swiss knife. I forget the name of it now. But it's a super sharp knife, and I got a TV set up down there, and I got a movie or something going. I got a towel on my leg, and I just sit there and I just take my time. I can flesh a beaver in about 15, 20 minutes.
That's cool. I don't know what I do wrong. I'm not really good at doing it by hand like that over my knee. And it kind of frustrates me because like Jackie Wirtz is who I watched. I filmed. I mean, the guy skins a beaver in a minute and a half, and he fleshes it in about 2 minutes. And I watched him, and he is so good at it. I don't know how sharp his knives are or whatever, because you know he goes at it so fast, and the fat and the gristle and that just fly off of it, and it doesn't do that for me. And I'm really good at sharpening things, but then I end up nicking stuff, right? And it just doesn't work for me. So I two-handed flesh on a beam. That works for me for beaver.
Yeah, I also have a beam. It's like a big piece of 12-inch pipe, and it's split, and it's made to hold the legs of the beaver. And after I fleshed it, I just go over it with a fleshman knife, just to take up any that I missed. And once I've done that, then I put them in the sink, a little bit of warm water, a little bit of soap, and I wash them off. Get all the mud and any blood and anything out of the fur. And then I have a couple of spinners. And I drop them in there and I spin all the water off, and then they're ready to board. And they come out just beautiful.
So where did you get your spinners?
I just went online and looked for secondhand ones. It's kind of like a little drum. They're like a dryer, but all they do is spin around, spin all the water out really fast. And they work slick.
Oh, I got to find something like that.
Board it right away.
No kidding. I've tried to find old ringer washers and stuff like that. You know, like I want one so bad. You know, like especially for coyotes. You know, like coyotes are beautiful in that, but they can sure be stinky and dirty in the beginning, right? Once you get it,
I even wash the wolves off as well.
Yeah.
Get them in there. Yep. And then for the marten, I built a drum with sawdust inside,
Yeah.
and I do my own drumming before I skin them.
Before you skin them.
I run them, yeah, I run them in the drum for about 3 or 4 minutes, and it helps loosen up the fur a little bit, and it just takes any dirt out of the fur, makes it look a little nicer.
Okay.
I'll have to send you some videos of my stuff.
Yeah, that would be cool. That would be cool. Yeah, you bet. I want to, like, I mean, beaver would be one of those animals that I would like to wash and spin. I don't like to, pardon me? What was that? Uh-oh, did we freeze up here?
I was losing your sound a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it says that we're getting unstable here. Well, maybe we'll call this an evening then. Well, we've been over an hour. We'll try this again. Try this again one day. It has been wonderful talking with you, Andrew. I got to ask, was it worth it moving to Canada to go trapping?
I have no desire to go back to England at all. Even though my family's there, my brother and sister, and my parents are still alive, there's no way of moving back to England. This is home.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
Home on the trap line.
Yeah, and Canada needs more people like you.
Also,
It has been a pleasure. Thank you for spending the time, and I'll probably get this up next week sometime. Okay? Because I'm heading to the trap line tomorrow.